All right, we're recording. Griff, can you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Yeah, I'm the co-director of this movie, which is called The Secrets of Blackmore. It's a history. It's sort of an exploration into the history of role-playing games and how Dungeons and Dragons came about. So it really covers the early years before Dungeons and Dragons exists,
Mhm.
and takes you through from sort of the beginning all the way to where Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax worked together to produce Dungeons and Dragons, which was published in 1974.
Brad.
Pretty much it.
And it's and this is you all been working on this for quite some time.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people, well, we didn't really know what to talk about today. Like, do we talk about gaming? Do we talk about, there's so much we can talk about, and there's so much going on in gaming as far as like a lot of social consciousness, people becoming more aware of
Yeah.
social issues and how they impact gaming. But we were working on, it was kind of a weird thing. I got back into gaming. I was doing it back in the 70s when I was a kid. And somehow I just stumbled into an argument online about gaming and then met a guy who actually knew the creator of Blackmore, which predates Dungeons and Dragons. And
Yeah.
he was like, he was trying to make, Dave Arneson was trying to make a movie. There's all this film footage, and I was like, well, you do realize I'm a filmmaker. And then we just, and we kind of got into this other conversation. We got into a conversation with some guys, one guy in Norway and a guy in Germany. So it was like Griff in Denver, Kevin in Minneapolis, St. Paul, two guys in Europe talking about Blackmore and how it impacted the creation of Dungeons and Dragons. And I just said, well, let's make a movie. And so yeah, now it's almost 7 years ago that we started.
Yeah.
It took about 6.5 years to produce the movie. It's very seat of your pants kind of guerrilla warfare filmmaking. It's not like we don't know what we're doing, but
Yeah.
it's not like, it's also not like we had a ton of money to spend on it. What we spent on the movie is more like less than what you would spend on catering for a big budget
Oh damn.
blockbuster.
Oh
I mean, we spent about $100,000 on it ourselves out of pocket, uh,
yeah.
over several years. But
And
it's a big chunk of money.
and can you explain to people like why that's not a lot of money in like making a film?
Well, it's hard because it's like with filmmaking, uh, you kind of have to. You end up spending a lot of money on things like catering, and then you know, if it's your first film, maybe you can get all your actors to volunteer
Right.
time, but that's hard if you don't have the money to spend to actually shoot through the week. And people, maybe they have jobs and things. It's just coordinating everything. And,
Right.
so with an indie film, you tend to stretch things out. So you're not spending money um, to make things happen fast. You're stretching it out. It takes years, and it's just a labor of love most of the time.
Yeah. What kept y'all going through it? Because I know there have been some snags and a lot of frustrations along the way.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just well, I know you're a gamer, right? So
yeah, I still consider myself a baby gamer because I know folks like you who've been playing since they were like 3 and 6 and shit. So I'm just
right,
like,
right.
I started playing till like my mid late 30s.
Yeah, but once you're a gamer, I don't know, there's just sort of that vibe. Like if you've played like RPGs or you're kind of in, you're in the in crowd. And
Yeah,
so you
cool.
can be like, I mean, that was the thing when we went out, our first shooting trip, we went out to meet the guys. And I think that was kind of interesting because I met, I think maybe the first interview was David Wesley, and you've seen the film, right?
I haven't actually. I
I
have
didn't
not
give you,
seen it.
oh, I thought I sent you a screener for it. Um, I'll,
Maybe. I
I'll get you a DVD. Um,
Excellent. I'm excited about that.
anyway, Wesley is kind of the person that's considered to be the sort of the creator of role-playing games because he created
Uh-huh.
this game called Brownstein. And so yeah, I sat down to talk to the guy that everybody told me was the creator of role-playing games, and so I'm there pretty much crapping my pants because I'm talking to the guy that did it, back in
Yeah.
the '60s. Um, so yeah, I mean, it just kind of fell together, and then I brought in Chris, my co-director Chris,
Yeah.
who Denver people will know his coffee shops, Bardo Coffees. Got to plug his coffee shops, which can always use visits by people wanting to do pickups, especially during the COVID times when sales are kind of crappy. But it was just kind of like, well, let's just go out to the Twin Cities and shoot some stuff. I did like 6 months of research. I had Dave Arneson, Kevin gave me Dave Arneson's Excel spreadsheet of basically everybody in the game industry that was a friend of his from back in the. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing. Like, you open up this folder and there are people's names that I knew that I had only seen on game, product covers. It'd be like
trying not to squeal in the moment, like
like think of your favorite writer or artist or whomever, and it's like, they're dead, but somehow I've ended up with their phone list, and I can call up all of their friends and talk to them and find out about them.
Right.
It was exactly like that. So I started just cold calling people and putting together sort of pre-interviews before we did the movie, trying to find out what's going on, what's the real story here. If somebody isn't a gamer, they may not know that there's a lot of drama surrounding our movie. Is kind of we're being ignored in a certain circles because we've created another narrative that goes against the official narrative. Yeah, so it's kind of political, and we tried to make the movie not gamer politics, but it's almost impossible to bring up the names Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax together without somebody getting really butthurt and wanting to start some sort of like war with you. The product, I mean, and everything's changed. The product started with Gary Gygax with this tiny company, and Gary's running it out of, I think it was this guy Don Kay's garage was where they had all the stock. And like at one point early on, Don Kay, who was a partner in the business, passes away. Everything for Dungeons and Dragons is in his garage. His wife hates Dungeons and Dragons. They got to figure out how to get, like, how do we go over and get our stock for our company out of our dead partner's garage when his wife hates everything about gaming? At every step, there's something ridiculous happening with Dungeons and Dragons. But now it's like all things that become successful. It's a big corporate product, and right now it's having a resurgence. They're selling a new generation of the game. There's a lot of drama around that. All the young kids are saying, like, you people don't really know how to role play. All you old folks, all you did was kill monsters, and you're bad people and stuff. And so there's a bit of drama there. All of us are, we're sort of, the older gamers are sort of the old do-it-yourself crowd, where you would get your own rules. Like you would home rule a lot of stuff. You didn't like a rule, you'd scratch it out in the book.
Yeah.
Rewrite what you wanted and play it your way. And so it's very much an organic, homemade sort of thing. And now it's not that at all. It's a mass-produced product for a very large audience, and it's being sort of marketed. I hate to say it, but it's designed toward a lowest common denominator, so it's not quite the same thing as what the original product was.
Right.
Anyway, am I going off sideways too much?
No, like, these are some things I wanted to move towards anyway, because you're talking about the expansion of consciousness in the world of gaming, which is something I'm very interested in, and also tying that to like that DIY, like this rules bunk, we're going to change that for our gaming group or whatever, or going forward, and so that was one of the things I saw in the book that accompanies this movie is that kind of action. I got chills when I read it, because it was like reminding folks that they had the power to, carry on the conversation. And
are you talking about the Tonnesborg book?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so cool, because I hadn't seen that before, and I didn't know it because I've always been on the other side of the the board, where the DM is making the rules and making the story and everything and creating the world, and we get to play in it. And so just that idea of just like, I think you were talking about, like, there's a lot of controversy, like people are starting to become more aware about social justice issues and things like that, even in their games. And so I don't know, I wanted to tie it more to that, taking it back to your own pen and paper, and like, you know, kind of using the book as a guide, and going from there.
I
Like,
think, well, I think as an industry, the gaming industry, the early tabletop gaming industry, of course, before D&D, it's really coming out of wargaming. And so it's people moving little lead soldiers, kind of historical situations mostly. And even within that community, it was more of a people writing each other's letters, making fanzines. It really, there was the era of, I think even in literature, there was the era of the mimeograph printer.
yeah.
Like a little literary magazine with a mimeograph machine. And they were doing the same thing within gaming. They were creating their own rules. They'd go to like a little convention, and they would sell a set of rules for $5, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you'd get it, and you'd go like, well, I like the way that movement is. I like the turn sequence, but combat's kind of iffy. I got this other game. I'll put them together. I'll make my own game out of the 2 games from somewhere else. And so it was really, it's just very different that way. And that's sort of the beauty, I think, in the story in the film is really about that. It's about these gamers that they're just trying to figure out ways to make their games more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not so much interested in like a game of chess. You have both sides are even, you know. And so you play a game, it's always fair. One of the things David Wesley looked at was the idea that maybe the game isn't fair, but if you achieve certain objectives that you wanted to achieve, then you still can consider that successful. Historically, like I think, was it Waterloo, where there was the Prussian cavalry or somebody shows up late, changes the battle. Well, you could maybe do a battle that the whole point for one player is just to delay the Prussians. If the Prussians hadn't shown up on time, Napoleon would have won the battle, right? So you do a battle that's off to the side to see if one of the players who maybe has a small force can just delay the Prussians by 3 hours or something like that, or an hour. And so that slowly evolves into the idea of sort of being a person and identifying with the little leaders figures in their armies. And I really got to get you the video. I thought I had gotten you a screener, so you'd know more what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But and so they started to do really what they were exploring was this idea of the fog of war,
right?
And the idea of not knowing. I think, in a sense, that Wesley and Arneson together, they're really the creators of role playing, in my mind, as best friends. It's like best friends hanging out, inventing a whole game industry, you know, in a basement somewhere. They sort of created also a kind of a new art form. I consider role-playing games to be kind of a new performed art form.
Absolutely, yeah, I can dig that.
You know, with Wesley's games, it was very collaborative in a lot of ways. And so, and even with Arneson, when he invented Blackmore, he didn't invent the whole world. Now, when you play D&D now, I mean, when I play D&D now too, it's like the dungeon master is expected to create everything. Players go in and play around. In Blackmore, it really relied on, he would literally ask players, can you come up with a bad guy for me? The guy would go off and come up with something. And so you'd get, like, let's say you invented some bad guy for the world,
right?
You know, a woman or whatever. But you're with the other players when they go to explore the bad guy's lair, and you just kind of hang back and pretend like you don't know anything. And you get to watch them, you know, interact with the character you created for this bad person and try to understand what's going on, because you're using fog of war, so you don't know everything. Right. So it's a very collaborative effort. Blackmore is extremely collaborative. And that's something also that I think has gone out of the game is the freedom to be more collaborative with the players and the referee,
right?
In a very free-form way.
I'm trying to think of if there are any games that I've actually truly felt collaborative. Like, it's always compartmentalized. So, like, it's interesting because you always go in as a team, right?
Yeah.
And you meet up as a team, you work as a team. for the most part. You know, you got your outliers and your
Right.
tricksters and whatnot. But like, this is interesting to me because yeah, this is a totally new idea that I never knew about, and just like that idea of collaboration. With that though, I have seen with at least one older gamer, you know, that fog of war thing happening where a couple of the players, one or two of the players, will have some kind of agenda that's unbeknownst to us.
Right.
And like, they're, you know, we're expecting them to behave a certain way in alignment with our group. However, something else is definitely happening, and all of a sudden the end of the world is coming. So like,
Right. Well, they have their own agendas.
Yeah, they have their own agendas.
You think they were like doing, like they're with you and they're like, we're gonna go do this thing, and they're really like, you're really just the bus taking me to go do the thing I want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting when that happens. It's just like, oh shit, like, now what do we do?
Right. Yeah.
It makes it really fun because it's just like this constant, I don't know, we're always trying to learn like different kinds of thinking skills and stuff. And I feel like a lot of those things happen in role playing.
Yeah.
You know.
Have you been able to play since COVID?
Online.
Okay.
There's a game. There's a game I'm in online. Yeah.
I played a game recently. It was like a bunch of people I think there was a guy maybe in Germany or Norway and a bunch of Brits, and it was kind of fun because we had to play it. Yeah, and I played another game. I played another game that I think one guy might have been in Asia. So we had to meet at like 1 p.m. because it was all the Brits. It was already like 9 p.m. Guy in Asia, it was early morning. I'm lucky. I guess I'm in the middle, so I get to like have a reasonable time. So one guy was playing at like early morning.
Oof.
But
you really wanted to be there. That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of, you know, what else. I mean, if I don't know what your listeners are like, what they're into, but
I don't know. If my listeners like me, I guess they like what I'm doing, because I'm really kind of all over the place. I have a ton of interests, and I know a lot of different people who are interested in a lot of amazing things, you know.
Right.
So I'm not really good at being a one-track person.
I'm not either.
Yeah, and I think that's where, for me, I feel that that's where good ideas come from, is just by like, there is that energy of like, you know, when something is insular and you're really focusing on that thing, and there's a lot of things that can happen with that.
Right.
That's not necessarily how I work most of the time. I get ideas from like connecting the dots through all these different conversations and all of these different scenarios, etc., and seeing how things work in kind of different mindsets, always putting myself on kind of a learning curve, and things like that, because I get really nervous about like being stagnant, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I never tell people I'm a filmmaker. Like if you meet me at a you know, I'm at a party and people always do that, like, you know, what do you do? I just tell people I'm a model railroader, you know, and or I'll tell them I'm a gamer, you know.
I'm a PIA.
I'm not gonna tell them I'm a filmmaker, you know.
Oh, then yeah. I'm a PIA. I'm like, well, I do a lot of things. I'm real kind of probably too laissez-faire about it. Even in like my reader bios, I'm just like, I do stuff. If you want to look, you can go look, whatever. Like, this is what I'm doing today.
There's a bunch of links there. Yeah. That's kind of one of my frustrations. No, I was just asking what your audience is like, because that's one of my frustrations is like as far as creating communities, which I think you're doing. So you're kind of creating a very broad community of just saying like, well, you're somebody that does something interesting, so I want to talk to you.
Actually, I do have a scope. It's like, I'm very interested in people who are creating things and creating positive change on many different fronts.
Yeah.
I'm usually not very interested in people who are doing things just for the sake of it. It's just like, I get excited about certain things, and there are certain questions that I definitely have, certain selfish things, like say the expansion of consciousness. Like how is that happening on a contemporary kind of level that we're not even talking about woo-woo shit, you know? So that's like one of my underlying agendas. So yeah, I definitely have a scope, It's just it's like an undercurrent instead of a statement, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just, I mean, like with filmmaking, well, like with, I've been sort of trying to reach out to other filmmakers and create energy there. And one of the things is that I think a lot of what you run into is there's that real tendency to want to, like, I'm going to market, oh, here's my product. Everybody look at me.
Yeah.
Here's my website. Click the thing, buy the Secrets of Blackmore movie. And then they don't want to, and so my thing has been to, like, turn it around and be like, well, like, especially on Twitter, I'm like, well, here's a gamer that's designing cool games. I don't know their game, but it might be the sort of thing you want to be involved with. And so I'm trying to generate this energy of like I make myself look good by saying, like, look at this person. It doesn't have to be about me. And so I want to become a resource for other people. And I've been trying to do that with film people. And I noticed that it's a real problem with, like, the film community, that everybody's sort of like gets on the social media and they're like, look at my movie that I spent 10 years making, but they're not really talking to other indies, or they get into all that crap of like, well, I don't really like, I like half of their movie, but there's that one part I don't like, so I don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's
well,
like that hyper criticism and not really recognizing what the community is.
Yeah, rather than just going like, that those people just spent 8 years doing this thing out of their pocket, trying to work regular jobs, trying to make this thing happen. It's amazing. It's amazing they have a thing,
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I've been really trying to focus on, is just generating more energy in terms of indie gamers, indie writers, I mean, I talk to people a lot on Twitter about whatever. And Twitter is kind of a cesspool, like a flaming dumpster fire of rage half the time. And I cull the people who are rage addicts.
Yeah.
Just block them out because I don't need to deal with meaningless rage. But I'm just trying to figure out ways to, like, be helpful to other people that are doing similar things. I think that's another thing, is just sort of creating energy there,
Yeah, I think that's extremely important, especially in these times. Like you said, there's like, in the gaming industry alone, there's like a lot of gaming has become massively corporatized, right?
Yeah.
And so there's like folks who are kind of like still in the spirit of gaming, like not just doing it for the sake of doing it, but like recognize like all the boons that have always been there in gaming, even if some things have been problematic, which we've kind of started to touch on a little bit. But like I'm trying not to get too far off track.
Well, I mean, I really wanted to talk about some of the ideas around just like, I mean, like, tying into what you're saying, it's like there are all these indie game designers out there. There are all these.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing
cool stuff.
Right. I'm doing game design. Like, Borg is really not a book about the movie. Borg was a dungeon we discovered researching the movie that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is like a game setting that predates Dungeons and Dragons, and so we were like, we should do a book on this. We wanted to. Cool. Yeah, but I'm seeing that also with, like, so people are sort of so focused on the corporate sort of stuff. Not to say that's not saying don't get that, but I don't think people are aware of the underground of people that are creating really interesting things on their own.
Yeah.
And it's, the same thing with film. I mean, I think music is the same thing. It's like the internet has freed us up to have, we have access to all this stuff. So, but really there are going to be a couple little pearls hidden in a sea of shit. Internet, and so, I mean, and that's kind of traditionally what people like DJs would do. They would find the stuff that's out there and be like, I'm going to play you a set.
Yeah.
Of, like, really awesome stuff. It may not even all be the same genre. I'm going to weave you through this thing. By the end of it, you're going to be like, what was that fifth song? Who is that? It's like, it's these people that are like in Africa or something, or, I mean, I just did that. I was listening to a playlist and got onto this like African hip hop playlist. And I'm like, I'm not even into hip hop, but I was like, this is really weird stuff. This is drawing on like really weird beat structures that sound almost like old industrial music. And I was like, an hour later, I'm like, I really need to be editing that book we're supposed to publish, but I just listen to all this stuff. And so, I feel like, I don't know what, I don't have any answers, but I think that within our communities, there is a lot of a possibility for people to just sort of say, like, I think you need to pay attention to that. It's really valuable.
Yes.
You know, if you value these certain things, you should look at that thing.
Right.
You know.
That's the cool thing that's been happening in my life. I think, when you're at undergrad level, it's like kind of like this mindset of lack, right? There's only
Right.
enough, there are only so many A's, there's only so much attention our professor can give us, and there are only so many badasses in the undergrad or whatever, and of course it's all silly and it's ridiculous, and some people get stuck in that mentality. And I feel very lucky to have, like, say in the writing community, start to be able to work with people who are like, there isn't any lack, and we're all doing this, and we're all doing something different, and we can different ways. And so it's been like, I get really excited about a lot of the stuff a lot of my friends are doing. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like, just realizing the community is very broad. We can't control who's in the community.
Right.
And we can't acknowledge what we have time and space and energy for. I think that's very important. But it's just like that whole, like you talked about, the hypercriticism a little bit. People get stuck there. That's what they're doing with their time and energy. But the folks who are creating, they're not stuck there. You know what I'm saying? We're working things out. What's that?
They're usually too busy to do that. They're all somewhere doing their, if you're painting, you're in your studio painting, you're not out there complaining about how so-and-so is a crappy painter,
Right.
Yeah.
And I've definitely been culprit to that too. Like, just like, I'm so guilty sometimes, like, oh, I can do better or whatever. But it's like, the thing is I was complaining and I was saying, oh, I could do better than this. But right. Like, I wasn't shooting, I wasn't doing it. Yeah. And that's the thing. I don't know if that just comes with age or what, but I wish everyone would get that sooner, because that's the thing, is the proof is in the pudding. Like, you make the stuff and then keep making things and keep creating. You don't hopefully get stuck and live on your past glory forever, which I see a lot too.
Well, it's funny because with filmmaking, it's such it's a monumental endeavor.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people who make films. I see a lot of small films where, and this isn't like these people suck. I'm just like, they haven't really reached the level of being able to, like, say, like, I made a movie that I could sell a lot of, because whatever, they're not being self-critical enough to develop their skills enough. But when you make a film, it's really kind of like 3 or 4 stages. It's like you're doing your writing for your screenplay, or doing your research, you're shooting or doing interviews, you're editing, and editing is also very expansive, because you have to, even with, we're no longer on film, we're doing digital, but you still have, like, you need to get a colorist to do all your exposures. You need a sound engineer to go through, and a sound designer. We actually hired some sound designers in Russia that were really reasonable, Fly Sound, to work with us. And you need a composer. We got a Russian composer to do our soundtrack, and he was phenomenal.
Nice.
And so you sort of create this thing, and then you split it off, and then so the picture's over here and the sound is over here, and then you merge it together, and then you add titles, and I mean, it's a very long process.
Yeah.
And you finally get it done. Like I said, it was 6.5 years for us, or like you said.
Yeah.
Which is a short time. Most people I know that work on indie documentaries tend to spend about 10 years.
Holy cats, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so, like, you've got this thing that you spent nearly a decade on.
Yeah.
And so that's the first stage. Then you have I need to make the money back that we put into the thing. We're not going to make any money off of the thing, but we're in debt now.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the next stage for us, is the marketing stage. Writers, I mean, if you're a writer, or if you can get signed for a recording deal or whatever, theoretically those companies will do that for you, but often they don't. And so that's kind of what we're doing now. In a way, I'm not really being as creative as I'd like to be, because now I've sort of turned into the social media guy, and I call it tickling. I mean, it's I have to get out there.
I think that's apt.
Tickle people. Yeah.
I think it's apt for social media is like tickling the internet a little bit. Like,
Yeah, you just go out there and hello, hello. We did something. Do you want to check it out? It's only $5 on Amazon or
right?
$4 on Vimeo. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, so there's that. I mean, it's just like you could make the most phenomenal thing, but then you still got to go out there and tickle the people.
Yep.
And I think that's a really important thing for the indies. That's, if you're an indie, that's half your job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad because
Yeah.
ideally,
I agree.
the creators should be allowed to just create and make more and
Right.
more things that somebody else goes out and like business people who are they enjoy doing this and they're good at
Yeah.
doing that, and then we keep doing that whole process. But
Um,
as an indie filmmaker, that's a really big part of it. I mean, I'm on social media. It's like, yeah, you can, if you're a gamer, you can come talk to Griff about gaming on social media. It's a little different from, say, some big Hollywood blockbuster. You're never going to get to speak to, like you can tweet at some superstar on a blockbuster and they're just going to ignore you. And chances are it's not even them running the Twitter account. They're on
right.
an anonymous one, you know. um,
Every once in a while, though, I'm surprised. I'm a little surprised, every
yeah,
once in a while someone will say something or, like something back or something. But that actually seems like the actual person. Because,
yeah,
that doesn't always happen, but it's usually kind of indie level, like, not quite
right.
like Beyonce. She doesn't do her shit. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's like you're not
Like
going to
she
send
doesn't.
Beyonce a message and when you get that little heart and you're like,
Yeah.
that is so cool. Somewhere on the planet, Beyonce's finger just went click on her mouse and a little
Right.
heart and like, oh, thank you, Beyonce. And no, it's some guy named Bob,
Or
they're like
Ingrid,
specialists or
whoever it
Ingrid
is,
or
like.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Or a
Like,
bot even. I don't know. Maybe they have a little bot that just like all the things that look positive. Like, well, data mine every little comment. If it looks positive, give it a little heart.
which
You
is
know.
amazing and frightening too. And I mean, I mean, I've dabbled in some of this, and I thought about doing it as work. It just changes so quickly, and I've watched other people work in it, and they'll kind of like have a conversation with the artist or something, like say if it's in music, and like, oh yeah, these are the kinds of things. Maybe you could send me some pictures that look a little
Hmm.
personal or something, and then like what's kind of the vibe, etc., and what are we moving towards. So like,
Hmm.
kind of like a Westward article, you're writing the Westward article towards an event, and
Right.
so you're building the social media presence towards that event.
Right.
um, and sometimes it's just like, it looks like candid shots or like, or whatever, and look, I'm by a river holding a fish.
Right. I
And
post pictures of my pet squirrel.
yeah, which is
Sometimes it's like,
friends with a squirrel. Like the squirrel is up in your hands and stuff.
yeah, she gets star treatment on this on my face on my personal Facebook and on our movie Twitter, because she's pretty awesome.
How
But
long,
yeah, I mean, what's that?
how long have you been friends with a squirrel?
That I think I'm going on 2 years now. She
That's
just
really cool.
I was just walking down the street and a baby squirrel lost its mom and climbed up my back, and I looked around. I stood there for 15 minutes and looked around, and she said, I'm not moving, and mom didn't show up, so we walked home. And then I'd go down there every day, look around for squirrels, and I couldn't see a mama squirrel because the mama
Oh,
squirrels will take them back.
yeah.
I was trying to get her to adopted back to a squirrel, and it wasn't really working. And so now she's really fixated on me being, I'm kind of this tree mom thing, food dispenser tree mom, and but she's also kind of like, F you, dad, I'm going outside. And so she's
Yeah.
lives outside now. So yeah, it's fascinating. I never expected to. I mean, that's kind of an interesting. You talk about consciousness. Um,
Yeah.
Different kinds of animal consciousness are really unique, and a squirrel is very like lots of energy, right? And so you
Right.
have to do this like Tai Chi thing and sort of let them come to you.
Yeah.
So, but now I'm learning that like she'll be on my shoulder, and I'll just she'll be squealing, and I'll hold my arm up and I'll stick her that like that, put my hand over her head, and she just goes, oh, and then I can, you know, and then we get a half an hour of her just like, oh, that's so good.
Oh.
But yeah, I think everybody should have a squirrel.
I want to, well, I have a lot of boxes that might get ate up, but like,
Yeah. But living outside, like if you had a squirrel that was bonded with you and you could go out, yeah, and you got your garden, they'll eat your garden.
Yeah. I think
keep
one
mine
in
well
my
fed.
garden last night or a couple nights ago, for some reason in my flowers, I'm like, that's weird. Okay, cool. Wonder what that's
Yeah.
all about.
Oh, yeah, they like to eat flowers. I've got tons of sunflowers that mine, well, all the squirrels eat those. But anyway, I don't know how we got onto squirrels. I guess we were talking about.
Well, you said you mentioned a pet squirrel, and I was like, we
Yeah.
ought to talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, we didn't really have any plans. I'm like, what can we talk about the movie to, you know, sort of talk about the movie?
Well, about the movie, and I actually got really excited when you said like role-playing zines.
Zines?
Yeah,
Oh,
you were
like the
talking
old
about
ones?
this. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that goes way back. You know, they had like there was a whole culture of that was kind of our major source for finding out about Blackmore.
Yeah.
Blackmore, like I said earlier, is the original fantasy campaign for fantasy role-playing that was created by Dave Arneson. And about 1968, he started producing a fanzine called The Corner of the Tabletop.
Okay.
And so it was just like, it was just anything that he felt was relevant to gaming and within their community of gamers there in the Twin Cities. And so he would just document what they were doing. And you can pick through it and find little hints to things. And like I can see, you can see relationships. Like one of the things I'm doing is just cataloging it and making lists of like whose name appears in what issue and what group are they playing with. Because they have schisms within their group where some people will be like, oh, I think that guy's a jerk, I'm going to go play with these guys, right? They have a pretty big group. And so you sort of see these clads of players over in different parts of the city playing together. And even that is really revealing if you're sort of a anthropologist, historian, to be able to see the associations of the different gamers in their groups, and that's coming out of the fanzine. And that's really where the original announcements for Blackmore are. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you ever want to see them, I got stacks of the original like gamers fanzines, but they're like really wonky. Like you read a lot about wargaming and it's something maybe the average RPGer wouldn't even be interested in. Because they were so fascinated with historical wargaming in that time period, that kind of a thing.
Right. Are y'all thinking about doing, I mean, essentially you have created the museum by creating the film. But have you ever thought about doing something like that? I'm just curious.
You know, yeah, well, I'd really like to see the film do better as far as sales and mostly just to develop an audience. There are really big collections out there. And that's really, as a researcher, that's really problematic because there are a lot of collectors who they acquire things and hide them, and they might tell their collector friends they have them, but it's sort of this secret society of people who have stuff. And it's so hard. Most of the collectors,
you have to be like a secret agent to get the goods, pretty much.
Yeah, and most of them aren't willing to share their information. And so if you're a researcher, what the collector crowd, it's a mix because the collectors are preserving things, but a researcher like myself cannot get access to the things they've preserved. And so there's all this research that's somewhat hidden. For all I know, the main premise of the movie could be completely wrong, and some document will appear in a year that I never got to see, and it'll change the whole narrative of what's going on. I don't think so. I think we kind of nailed it pretty firmly. But yeah, I mean, that's been a really huge problem. Luckily, I was able to access 2 really big collections of Dave Arneson stuff, and that also is really disturbing. From my sister Ivy did editing on the movie, and she helped me go and archive a bunch of stuff that was in this one collection. They had scanned stuff for their reference purposes, but they had all these slides and we wanted them scanned at a really high resolution. So we brought our own film scanner. I mean, Ivy just sat at an Airbnb and just worked all day while I went and did stuff other places. But there was a night when we were sitting there together and we had all these boxes of Dave Arneson stuff, just like personal items. And she pulls out this little baby bracelet and it says David on it. And
Oh, wow.
I'm getting all choked up talking about it. It's like, you know, so she's holding it and she's like, Griff, I think this is David's baby bracelet. And we both looked at that and it was like, oh, wow, that's, when you're researching a person and you get to hold something that's kind of like precious, not to them as a baby, but their parents, and you sort of see them maybe through their parents' eyes like that.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, like you posted that picture of you with your grandfather.
Yeah.
I just loved that. He just seemed like such a nice guy, and he looks like he's just like, got a grip on me there.
Yeah,
this big, my girl.
Big bear.
Yeah, you know, stuff like that where you can kind of see that. And so that was very interesting. And then it also became an issue of, I'm all teary just thinking about all these sort of emotional connection, family things. But the other side of doing research, which I hadn't really encountered before, is that it's almost like you're an undertaker. And it took a lot of, it took me probably 5 years to get to the point where I could see the Arneson family's collection that they kept to themselves, and they finally were like, okay, we'll let you look at this. And so we were seeing things that were very personal. And then there's this other collection, which I could probably do a 90-minute show on that collection, which is, it's all very complicated, how famous people's personal property ends up in strange places is very weird.
Nice.
And so we were looking at the collection with the baby bracelet, which is the David L. Arneson collection, and that has just all these personal things. And so it's really like, even when you're looking at something as innocuous as maybe a receipt, I mean, literally a receipt from like a Walgreens or a Piggly Wiggly or whatever.
Right.
Or there was an envelope that was full of, it was all the, what do you call it when you make plans with a travel agent? Your itinerary. It was David's itinerary to go on his honeymoon with his wife.
Oh, dang. Yeah.
You know, and so
that
like,
sounds cool.
Well, it's cool, but at a certain point, like you realize you're really inside their life. Yeah. And it really, I don't know, I guess maybe you have to be doing that it makes you step back. The guy that is curating that collection, I think treats it with the utmost respect and really honors it. And I think that's really important. I don't think, maybe this kind of ties into like people that work in museums, they get these collections of things and there really is sort of this essence of this person that is no longer with us in it. And there is a certain invasion of privacy, even by handling or seeing these things.
Right.
And so that was probably like one of the more interesting surprises that I didn't expect to have while making the movie, was that all of a sudden I was very close to this person as far as seeing their own, just everything about their private life that, you know, the stupid stuff that you don't want, you know. I mean, I think the collection even has his teenage like retainer in it, you know, like, and so, yeah, I mean, I realized looking at that collection that before I die, like I'm going to start now, I'm going to destroy all my private possessions. When I die, nobody's going to find anything of me. I will no longer exist. I don't want anybody going through, you know, like I don't want them to like find some stupid letter I wrote to my grandma when I was 8 or something, like that. It's, I don't know. It's a very, very strange experience to be able to get that close to somebody that is famous and is no longer with us.
We're all very curious about each other, right? Like that's something I've definitely had to come to terms with. It's just like, I just want to be a fly on the wall. And like people are very curious and they mine information, and I know I'm guilty of it too. Like when I went to Ireland, in Dublin, there's like the Writers Museum and there's the James Joyce Museum, and like one of the things that I was absolutely fascinated with was, yeah, sure, the typewriters they used every day and the newspapers they read and whatnot, the pipe they smoked from, but the death masks, because the death masks made me feel like, holy crap, like I could touch James Joyce's face right now if there wasn't glass.
Right, right.
You know, and if someone wasn't gonna come chop my hand off. But like there's James Joyce's face right there. This is the guy that has written this stuff that has caused me a lot of like kind of exuberance and also like frustration and consternation and just like lots of questions, etc. And just like
Well, you
just
know,
kind of
he
in awe
wrote
of
the
it.
Dubliners in Trieste, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he wrote it in Italy. So,
Well, that's, I mean, that's cool. You can like have a little distance.
but no, I mean it's weird, right? When you get that connection, but
Yeah,
also
like
it's this
weird
sort of
that we
thing
freaked
of
it.
I don't know if I was ever granted this permission to do this. And so,
Yeah.
like, even within the film, I really tried to avoid going into his personal life too much
Hmm.
because I didn't think it was. I don't know. I saw the movie. Have you seen the film? I think it's called Searching for Vivian Maier, about the
I haven't seen it.
photographer in Chicago.
I
Um,
haven't, but thank you for reminding me. I did want to see that, but
well, I mean, I might
yeah,
load it a little bit too much. I think that filmmaker really overstepped certain boundaries, and I think that filmmaker, there was a certain level of violation within that film that I find really unpleasant. And also,
okay.
that filmmaker made all these claims to being like it's sort of ridiculous. In the film, he goes and finds the relatives of this person who's dead, but
Yeah.
then at the same time, he claims that there are no relatives, and thus he's entitled to this entire collection of photographs that he's going to make a lot of money off of. It's so I like
Yeah.
that particular film is a really good example of what I consider to be really unethical filmmaking.
Sure. And it's
Um,
really popular right now. I mean, you got like, my brain went to the straight sensationalization of like the Tiger King. Am I
yeah,
saying that right? You
I
know,
didn't
like
see
that
that
kind of
one,
thing.
but
I watched a couple episodes and I couldn't
was it just too
watch.
violating, kind of
Uh, there's
cringy?
exploitation on every level, and in my heart of hearts, I feel like the greatest exploitation was the one of the filmmakers in Netflix. And in my opinion, I feel like they're the greater exploiter,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And it made me feel so uncomfortable. It made me feel
Hmm.
so uncomfortable.
Well, that's yeah. I think I don't know. It's difficult, you know. That
Mhm.
I think those are the like the real moral issues that you come up with. I don't know if you've done any like sort of more historical work or biographical work on anyone, but you do if you get access to certain things, then
Yeah,
you enter this you you really pass through the veil into this other land where
yeah,
what you do with that information is it's really questionable whether you should even acknowledge that you know that because it's like
yeah,
you can put a lot of weird spin on that, you know, like I was saying. I mean, even holding
yeah.
Dave Arneson's baby bracelet, that's a trip, you know. um so yeah, I don't know, you can take all of that with whatever, a grain of salt
I
or some
I dig
tequila.
that. It's the reason why I'm not a journalist, you know, because like you start to get to know. I mean, you know, all the different things I do, like professor, massage therapist, journalist,
Well,
journalism.
yeah, like,
I'm not a journalist, but yeah, you're on either side of the veil a lot of the times, and there are things
yeah,
privy to that, you know, you can't
I mean
divulge.
that's kind of
divulge.
the big thing with working on the film for us. And I think a lot of I mean, these are the sorts of things people don't really talk. I've never seen interviews where people talk about sort of the process of not about the filmmaking, but more about the relationships, but even developing the
Yeah,
relationships with the gamers in the group, developing a relationship with the family, Dave Arneson's family.
yeah,
It took a long time to be able to. With the gamers, it was kind of cool because they were just kind of as curious about us as we were about them.
sure.
And then we were trying to be like the journalists, and we're out here and we're off camera. But then they
Yeah,
were going to play like some Civil War miniatures, big battle with soldiers, and they were Dave Arneson's soldiers to simulate this battle. And so they were like, "Griff, you want to play?" And I was like, Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was sort of like, once they realized that we were also gamers, we weren't just people trying to. There's this sort of rape cam quality to documentaries, like with
Yeah.
the Netflix stuff. You can
Yeah.
see a lot of Netflix stuff where it's like rape cam. They go in, they try to find out all the dirt, they try to show the people all the dirt.
Yeah.
You don't, as the person who the dirt is on, you don't get to contextualize it. They
Right.
spin it, and then they go away. Whereas our approach was like, well, we're really interested in this stuff you did, but we really like you guys. And they were like, yeah, we really like you too. And so now we're all friends. And so that was kind of like one of the weird things about it too, was that because of all the politicking around Dungeons and Dragons that Dave Arneson had, and sort of he was sort of written out of the picture, like Tesla or somebody like that. A lot of people would argue that and I don't try to spin up that drama at all, but within the Blackmore bunch, even getting in there is a little bit hard. Like you can get to a certain point. They're Minnesotans. They are really nice, but there's like, it's like peeling an onion, you know? And,
Right.
and so now we're in the group, and once you're in the group, it's sort of like being in the mafia. And it's like, yeah, when people want to, now people come to me and they're like, can you get me contact with this person or that person? I'm like, I don't know. I got to go research you and make sure you're a safe person for them to be talking to. Because if you're like some scumbag, I don't want to, you know, I'm part of this group and I have to honor my word and I have to honor my reputation. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's very interesting. It's all been a really interesting process as far as I wasn't really a documentary filmmaker. I'm more of an abstract expressionist filmmaker. So I was doing weird video art stuff.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in the image than I am in like narrative, spoken narrative. I'm more interested in visual narrative. And so it, you know, it was, I mean, it's just, Chris and I always talk about the movie. There have been several movies attempted, and nobody's been able to succeed at making a movie on Dungeons and Dragons. We're the only ones who did it. We started after everybody else. We did it for less money, and we did it because we're probably too stupid to know better, you know? And so yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just like, we made this thing. It's kind of cool. If you're into gaming, it's cool. I really kind of want to get back to doing weird abstract expressionist films and exploring narrative within film. Like sort of, I hate to use the word, Sarah is always talking about experimental writing. You know, it's like, it's not an experiment. I know what I'm doing. It's just not, we're breaking the mold here. We're just changing the pattern and exploring different patterns. And so I really want to get, I guess exploratory film would be, it's a difficult term. We need a new term that's got a hashtag, right? But I'd like to get back to doing more stuff like that. But somehow I got roped into this, and I'm probably going to be, I don't know. It's like, it's sort of like typecasting as an actor. You know, Griff is now I'm now the Dungeons and Dragons documentary guy. Really, I want to be the Chris Mark or the I don't know, like, name a famous, there's a famous woman, I can't remember her name right now, but a couple of them actually. But I want to be like the, you know, the obscure artist that's doing the weird shit, but instead I'm like the guy doing this, you know. I don't know, it's all quite interesting. Even, I mean, I'm on your show today. I'm an introvert. I didn't really want to be the face of the movie, but we have to, but I have to, you know, we have to talk about it, get people interested in seeing it. Chris doesn't want to do it either, so he made me do it. So now I'm the guy that, you know, I'm like talking to people, and people know what I look like, when really I'd like to hide out and remain obscure. And, you know, I don't want anybody digging through my stuff after I croak. You know?
Yeah, I can dig that.
Yeah.
Just like, ooh, I didn't know there was dirt, but apparently there is.
Yeah, yeah, you never know, right?
Right. Just
things always change.
Yeah.
You know? Or like, yeah, there was that one time when he was hanging out with Tamika and he like sneered at her, and we think that was a really serious statement there.
It was like,
we're gonna review that and run it in slow motion.
It was like secret code for blah blah blah.
Yeah. Like, anyway, so anyway, I don't know. I what else can we talk about? You know,
we talked all kinds of stuff. I like I really love this. And like, it's just like, it feels like, you know, like this project, I'm not going to say it's wrapping up because it sounds like while it's kind of coming to its vision state,
Hmm.
it feels like you're going to be tied to it a little bit for quite some time. But like, how does that feel like finally getting to that spot?
You
Like
know,
where
it's
you
great,
have to
except
think,
for as a filmmaker, you don't make money off of these films, so you're just really broke, you know.
yeah,
So what we're doing, we did the Thomas Board book to kind of generate some more cash.
okay,
Doing the research, we've discovered old game manuscripts, and they're games from really early in the like the roots of role playing games.
yeah,
Like I have the what's the equivalent of the Monster Manual, which is all that remains, almost all that remains of the very first science fiction role playing game.
huh,
You know, like stuff like that. It's like, and so we're wanting to maybe publish some of this stuff,
yes,
either in like a historical book format or like there's a gangster game. It'd be cool to publish it. It's like all the artwork is there, all the maps, all the character, you know, how what to roll up for characters, a sample scenario story adventure. And it's interesting too because it's like Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. As much as people think that they always hated each other, they
right,
did sort of come. They were approaching each other again later in life, sort of as
okay,
friends, I think.
yeah,
And so one of the things they did a lot was they would make references to each other in the games they published.
yeah,
And so Dave Arneson sets the gangster game in Zurich, Wisconsin, which is a total play on, it's a town on Lake Zurich, Wisconsin, which is a total play on Lake Geneva, you know. And so it's sort of his little jab at Gary, and then Gary would do the same thing with his games. Like there's a thing in the original, I think it was the Dungeon Master's Guide. There's a treasure item called the teeth of Dahlgren or something like that. It's
mm-hmm.
an anagram of Dave Arneson, you know, and that's what, you know, so it's like they were also playful with each other in a
Yeah,
way, and so that's kind of one of the things I always talk about when I talk about the movie is like I think the fans with any sort of thing like that, there's probably like stuff like that in music and writing, like, you know, people talk about the Beatles and it's like which Beatle did that, you know, who liked which person. And I don't know, Arneson and Gygax kind of figured it out later in life. They were talking to each other. Gygax invited Arneson to publish Blackmore modules with TSR, I think in 84, 85.
mm-hmm.
Uh, and so that really changes the narrative for the people that want it to be a war and like this guy's the good guy, this guy's the bad guy. It's just not like that. Uh,
Right,
so that's part of it. But yeah, as to like where I'm gonna go, where we're gonna go with this, people want another movie, I guess. We did probably around 200 hours of footage as far as interviews,
wow,
and then hundreds of hours of pre-interviews on the phone and the internet. And so we have this huge collection of footage. When you do interviews, there's a lot of stuff that you just don't really, you know, it doesn't really serve anything. But
sure,
we could probably do another movie, but at the same time, if I started doing another movie, I'd want to do more interviews.
yeah,
Our first interview for the next movie, or even just for the archive after the movie was done, you know, a couple months back. I guess it was almost a year ago, with this guy named Mike Carr, who was the first cleric in a role playing game, Bishop Carr in Blackmore. I mean, all these guys are like, you talk to them and it's like, yeah, this is the first wizard, this is the first elf, this is the first dwarf, this is the first
wow,
like that. That's the kind of the weird thing with them. But um, yeah, I don't know. We'd like to do another movie. We might do a Kickstarter for it. The problem is that movies, I don't want to just churn something out.
yeah,
Um, you know what? I mean, if as a writer, you write a book and then people want, can you do another one? You know, and
yep.
it's like, it's going to be 5 years. Like,
Understand on the other side, like, you know, they burn through it in a few days or something, and it's taken like so many years to like,
well, I'm gonna be, yeah. It's if we do another movie, I'll be over 60 by the time the next D&D movie is done, and it's like, well, and then I won't have had the time to really do this other stuff I like to do. So,
yeah,
um, I don't know, it's complicated, you know, like, yes, I want to do it, but yes, I want to do other things.
Yeah.
I think the important thing with something like this is that at least you can put it's sort of like when you finish a manuscript and you know, I finished the book, it's done, off it goes. Like, I'm able to say this is done and move past it. And now I can go on to the next thing. You know, I got this thing under my belt. Feel good about myself, you know. And but our thing, even Chris, who never does the interviews, so you never see him. But our big thing is just trying to find cool things that we like to do and kind of focus on. It's like, what can we do next that's cool, you know?
Yeah.
And so I write screenplays for movies, and so, you know, nobody's going to back any of my movies. So I have this one that I might do. It's like this science fiction movie that I want to do. And it's just a shorty. It would be something like we could shoot it in a day or two and edit it in like maybe 2-3 months, you know?
Nice.
So yeah, I kind of want to do that. You know, I don't know if you looked at did I ever give you links to my weird sound collage stuff?
I don't think so.
Oh, it's secret. I'll send it to you. It's hidden.
See how you are?
Yeah.
I'm excited about this. This is because I'm learning some new things. I didn't know about these things.
Yeah, I mean, I have like a secret SoundCloud where I rip sounds off of YouTube and assemble stuff and create. I sort of am like exploring the idea of I'm really curious about narrative within sound.
Okay.
And not without like sort of lyrical content or I've always been interested in the idea of sort of prelingual communication. And so I was really studying that a lot with visuals, with Super 8 films when I started back in the 80s. And so now I'm kind of coming back to doing sound collage work where just trying to create a narrative where we're just creating energy, you know, and there's energy, there's not energy, there's softness or there's harshness, or just exploring sound kind of in that way is like pure, like a sound is interesting because it's you don't really process it. It's like just right into your skull, certain sounds, you know. And so kind of playing with that idea of like what sounds that go right into your skull as an experience can I put together to create sort of this narrative that just goes right into your head. And
you know what is such a good example of that? Sorry, I was thinking of
that's fine.
I was trying to think of like kind of contemporary things that remind people too, like Hereditary and also Midsummer. That director, like the soundscaping that happens in both of those films, I feel like were very effective and definitely still carry through even after you see the film.
Right.
Or like, I mean, even just like a good soundtrack or something, you know, like obviously Star Trek is pretty Star Wars is what I mean. It has like the leitmotifs
big
and and things
I'm
like
really fascinated by that sort of like subconscious stuff though, like
yes,
like just well, like did you see like There Will Be Blood?
Yes. Yeah.
Remember that just endless sort of tone in part of it where it's just like this noise. It's like a siren almost, and it's just this constant siren, and like it, and so it does that thing where you're like, at first you're like, okay, I'm really aware of this. You know, like, what do I think about this? And you start to think about the tone, and it almost pulls you out, and then you sort of almost forget it's there, and you get pulled back in, and I don't know. I mean, everybody's going to have a different experience. That was kind of one, you know, my experience with it was like, whoa, what is this? This is huge, you know?
I still think soundscaping is a little underutilized, like, you know, or it's just kind of stock or whatever, like they're the stock sounds and stuff like that. But like when stuff like that happens, oh, it's so cool. It's so cool because it's like you do feel it in your body, right? It's not just from the things you're seeing. It's also like that pitch or whatever, and how it's placed. And it's just, I don't know. I love stuff like that.
I mean, that's one of the things I really miss about film going digital is we used to, or even music, you know, in the old days of cassettes and reel-to-reels. The tape speed, you'd always have a little bit of tape hiss. They try to use Dolby and stuff to get rid of tape hiss, but tape hiss was there if you were an amateur. And so it sort of became this really especially in independent films. Like you would hear the cut in the film because the hiss would
Yeah.
be, you know, now like they can just take it all out. And so I kind of miss that. I almost want to like marry a certain just white noise tape hiss to a certain image. And so as I do an edit and I'm cutting between one image and another, like the white noise the sound becomes associated with that image, you know, or even a character like this person has this kind of crackly sound and this person has this crackly sound. Like, I don't know. Just, but I do miss that. Like you don't see that in big Hollywood films, you know. It's a very much a, and it's sort of a space. Sorry, I'm babbling, right? But
No, this is good. I'm not as much as a filmy as I would love to be, but I take interest in certain things, and like I feel like there are definitely certain genres that tend towards doing that more. Like
right,
maybe not so much mainstream, but I feel like horror does a lot of that. And it can be really fun, or like some kind of thriller kind of thing, you know.
yeah,
And it's just like those sounds, like overlaying of sounds and stuff, especially in horror. Like I feel like a lot of those folks have it down pat. You know, because you start with like maybe whispers or something, like that's kind of the stock
right,
stuff. But then
right.
like that example Hereditary, like there's a kid that just makes a sound, and I'm not even doing it very well,
Really?
but it's a very rounded like sound, and it
Oh,
just gets really freaky after a while, for a lot of different reasons, and it also is because of the sound engineering that happens throughout the film.
did
um,
you ever see that movie, the Japanese horror movie? I don't know if
like Ringu or like one
it
of
might have been
those.
Ringu or one of those, but it was like a sequel, and it had the lady with the
Mhm,
hair, the hair hanging down, the wet
mhm,
hair,
mhm.
and kind of tangled hair, and the voice sound was just this like,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was a sound as a kid. I mean, I can't do it because you have to do it really softly. It's just,
Yeah,
and
there's
and I remember seeing that and just being like, God, that's so freaking simple, right? But
mhm.
it's perfect, you know. And so here's this movie that they're doing the most, like all those Japanese movies are a great example of like, we're gonna make something for like 20 grand or 10 grand over 3 weekends, you
Right,
know, and it's like a mega blockbuster. And then Hollywood's like, well, we got to spend like $300 million. Can we do that sound? It's like,
right.
no, we got to get, you know, for 15 engineers to go out and record banging on little things or crickets or whatever, and we're gonna like do this montage to make the sound. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
that
it's
little
like taking
creaky
it
sound
back.
is, yeah, it's like, so that's definitely like where I'm at with the film stuff. Is I'm still really fascinated with the really sort of garage kind of do it yourself, you know, like
Yeah,
how can you do that and do it really well like they did with that, you know?
yeah,
That's a
I
really
love
cool
that
thing.
too. Luckily, I've worked with some folks who recreate like radio shows and stuff like that, and so you
Really?
get to see different things that create the different sounds in their radio shows. You know, plop plop, like the coconut plop or whatever,
Yeah.
like or just different things that make it up. And what was it? Whoa, my brain just went. But anyway, it's really cool to
Well,
see.
I mean, we kind of, you know, we're pretending to do the interview, but we know each other in person. But I remember when you were doing
I
music
do
with
all my interviews.
yeah, but weren't, I don't know if you still talk to Willie at all, you know,
I
like
haven't seen him in a long time. So for
really.
I don't know, Fat Willie used to own MBS Electronics. I think he still does it in some capacity, or
Yeah,
was. And
but I'm always fascinated by the old technicians like that,
yeah,
like
hands on.
he was like the Hammond organ repair guy. I think it
Yeah,
was Hammond, you know. And so like he would tell me these stories like, yeah, the Allman Brothers were in town, and so I had to go up to Red Rocks, and you know they wanted. I mean, it's like, and they were like, no, the only person that can touch our Hammond is Willie, you
yeah,
know. So Willie shows up, and it's like Willie's like a rabid conservative Republican. Like I used to hang out with him, and he'd be like, yeah, you damn socialist, you know, or you Stalinist or whatever, and I'd be laughing my ass off. Like I thought he was just a hoot. I loved him, you know. I didn't care about his politics or whatever. But
yeah,
he's like up at Red Rocks, and then he gets, you know, somebody discuss he for some reason, somebody notices he's wearing his like, you know, Republican hat or whatever. And it gets reported back, and it's like, yeah, but that's the Hammond organ guy. And like,
Yeah.
he can do
Like,
anything
so
he
good at what he
wants.
does.
Yeah. And so, I don't know,
Yeah.
I like that sort of craftsmanship. Like, I really think craftsmanship is really fascinating with things like film and sound, you know, like a sound engineer, like you were saying, like sound design, you know.
Yeah.
People aren't aware of how much these people do for the movies we see, but they're the people that put the little, you know, little things you can barely hear, like,
Right.
you know.
Like, why do I feel this way? I'm just seeing this thing, and it's not what I'm real confused, and it's the sound.
Yeah. It was even like there was one of the Star Trek sounds, like somebody, you know, I do go watch some of the Hollywood movies, but somebody got blown out an airlock, and they did something to the sound where it was almost like they did some weird phase shift thing where it was just suddenly this like an empty sound, you know.
Yeah.
Like, and I remember hearing it and seeing what was on the screen, and I was just like, what did they do to make that sound like nothing? But it's a sound that sounds like nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's, you know, yeah, it was amazing.
That was someone's assignment. They're like, you know what I need? I need a sound that sounds like nothing in 2.5 hours. Okay, see you later.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Did you get the nothing done yet? No, I'm still working on the nothing. I need another half an hour. I think I got the nothing, but I need another half an hour.
Like, no, you have 15 minutes.
I can't give you nothing until a half an hour's passed. I need a little bit more. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, that stuff is absolutely fascinating. Like, that's why I don't know, I just want to keep learning all the time. And I have to, like, you know, consider, like, you know, there are pros who do that. And that, I don't know, that's something, we're so used to just like pressing a button or something, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but that's the thing, is like, to actually make a sound that sounds like a sound. Like, how do we do that? Like, leaves rustling or something, how do we make that actually work?
Right.
You know?
How do you make that sound like that sound? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really, and I don't have those answers, but it's just like, definitely something I've been able to ask because of some other sounds that have happened in other films that I've been privy to somehow.
Yeah.
Well,
even like you do. What's that?
Well, I'm kind of running out of time, but I wanted to make sure folks know how to like support Blackmore and your work too, which I didn't know about. Your surrealist.
You know, all that stuff is secret until it's finished. You know, it's like kind of scrapbooks out there. I share links with people I know, but it's just like they're experiments. You know, they're like assignments. I've assigned myself to make something out of. Like, I found all these recordings of people ice skating on frozen lakes, and I was like, you will make a collage of frozen lake sounds.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and they're like, it's just the sounds of cracking ice, you know. It's fascinating. But our movie, secretsofblackmore.com, we got to do the spiel. We put it on Amazon. Actually, you know, a lot of people are not into Amazon. We put it on Amazon because the average viewer, when they go to the site we were using, they'd be like, oh, wait, I've got to get an account here. I don't want to do this. Whereas with Amazon, people are like, yeah, click, I got an account. Click, give you the money. Bezos, I'm buying you a new limo, you know. But they don't, the problem is that Amazon doesn't give us as big a cut as Vimeo does. So we have 2 links for, you can watch it on Vimeo or Amazon on our website. We also have these bad boys. I forgot where I put things like, we got the Blu-rays, we got the DVDs. We did, if somebody is really into gaming, we did a set of posters. So we took, this is the original Blackmore, the Blackmore World Map.
Yeah.
So that's like the very first fantasy role-playing campaign in 1971.
Holy
cow. So there's like supporting text, a lot of documents that are like the sort of the most significant ones for the creation of role-playing. And so we did these double posters as kind of like they were a Kickstarter bonus thing if we could help us get over the hump, you know.
Nice. Yeah.
And so this is the original, turn it this way, this is the original town of Blackmore. This is David McGarry's copy. Old gamers who maybe have had a copy of dungeon board game. David McGarry's copy is this one. And then
Very
same
cool.
thing there. I don't know. I mean, we didn't touch on a lot of the crazy stuff, actually, thankfully, because we have our own controversy and we're trying to suppress that. So
Okay. Yeah, if you want to do part 2, we could do that a little later. Okay, LOL.
Thanks for having me on, though.
Yeah, thank you very much for talking with me and stuff. And is there like a website folks can go to?
Yeah, it was the Secrets of Blackmore, or secretsofblackmore.com.
Okay.
And they can find. And we're on Twitter, Blackmore Film. We're on Facebook. I think it's Blackmore Movie or something like that. I forgot. What Facebook always makes you just type in Secrets of Blackmore. You'll get us on Facebook too. And I don't know. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
thank you.
I always wonder, like I hope I was interesting enough, Tamika. You know.
I hope that all the time too. Sometimes I'm scared to listen to these.
Yeah.
Because I definitely made a deal of like, okay, well, if I say something goofy, it stays on.
There it goes. It's in there, yeah.
So.
The live to tape effect.
Yeah.
All
well,
righty.
I'm going to close this up.
All right. Ciao.
All right.